I was heading home from a long week at work, the kind of Friday night when you look forward to nothing more than the peace of your own bed. The clock on my dashboard blinked 12:15 as I drove along the winding secondary road that connected me to the small house I had in the countryside. The city felt like it was miles away, almost forgotten in the stillness of the night. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of damp earth, and the night sky stretched above me like a blanket of ink dotted with stars. My convertible hummed along the narrow road, its engine a soft murmur against the surrounding quiet. I lived on the outskirts of town, tucked into the edges of the woods where the land opened up into vast, empty fields. There were only a few houses down this road, each spaced far apart, swallowed by the thick undergrowth and towering trees that crept in from every side. I had always loved the solitude, the way the world seemed to disappear into the darkness as you drove down this road. But tonight something felt different. The usual hum of crickets and distant sounds of life were absent. It was as if the world was holding its breath. The deeper I drove, the more the night seemed to press in, thicker and darker, until even the trees felt oppressive, their shadows long and sinister. It was unsettling, like the quiet itself had a weight to it. And then, just as I rounded a sharp bend in the road, it came. A scream. A sharp, high-pitched wail that sliced through the silence of the night. It wasn't the kind of scream you hear in movies. It wasn't frantic or wild, but something more hollow, more desperate. The kind of scream that made your blood run cold. Because you knew it wasn't someone just playing at fear. It was real. The sound came from somewhere ahead, but it echoed, bounced off the trees, making it impossible to pinpoint. My heart raced. I slammed my foot on the brake, the tires screeching on the asphalt, but I couldn't quite shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. I scanned the darkened road, my eyes darting from one side to the other. The headlights of my car cut through the dark, revealing only the twisting road ahead and the looming trees, their branches heavy with the weight of the night. There was nothing. No one. But then the scream came again, this time clearer, more urgent. "Help me," the voice cried, desperate and trembling. My throat tightened as I gripped the steering wheel. This wasn't just a figment of my imagination. Someone was out there, someone who needed help. Without thinking, I shut off the engine and grabbed the small flashlight from the passenger seat. The beam of light flickered briefly before illuminating the darkness. My hands shook, but I forced myself to step out of the car, the night air pressing in around me like a cold, suffocating fog. The flashlight seemed weak in the vast emptiness of the woods, its light barely cutting through the thick blackness. I moved toward the left side of the road where the scream had sounded the loudest. The ground beneath my shoes was soft and uneven, and each step felt heavier than the last, as if the earth itself was reluctant to let me go. The silence around me seemed unnatural, unnerving. I could hear nothing but my own breathing and the rustle of leaves underfoot, the occasional snap of a twig breaking. The scream came again, distant but unmistakable. "Who's there?" My voice was tight, strained, cutting through the oppressive silence. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I tried to steady my breath, the air thick with tension. The answer came almost immediately. "Help me, please." The voice was no longer just a faint cry in the distance. It was close, right there, just beyond the trees. It sounded so real, so full of panic, I couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency swell in my chest. I moved toward the sound without thinking, driven by the frantic desperation in the woman's voice. I didn't know who she was, or why she was out here, but something about the way she called out, it didn't feel like a trick. There was no malice, no intention to deceive, just pure, raw fear. My heart pounded in my chest as I pushed forward, the light from my flashlight barely revealing anything beyond a few feet of the narrow path I was on. The trees seemed to close in around me as I walked, their branches whispering in the wind, their shadows shifting and stretching like unseen fingers reaching out to touch me. I continued to run down the narrow trail that cut through the dense woods, each breath ragged and sharp in the cool night air. The ground beneath me was uneven, roots and stones threatening to trip me up at every step. The trees, tall and foreboding, seemed to press in on me, their branches twisting like gnarled fingers in the dim light of my flashlight. The further I ran, the more the scream seemed to fade, slipping away as if it was being carried on the wind and pulled further into a shadow. A phantom. The trail twisted and turned, but no matter how far I ran, no matter how many bends I rounded, the sound remained constant. The woman's voice, still desperate, still filled with terror, didn't grow any closer. In fact, it seemed to stay the same, as if I were running in place. The fear that gripped me deepened. The distance felt infinite, and with each step, the nagging thought grew louder. Was I even getting closer? Or was I spiraling, deeper into some kind of twisted maze that kept me in place? It was as though the woods themselves had become a labyrinth with no end. Doubt began to seep into my mind like a creeping fog. Was this real? Was this woman truly out here? Or was I losing my grip on reality? Every instinct told me to keep running, to follow the sound. But the further I pushed into the woods, the more disconnected I felt from everything. The air felt colder now, heavier, and the weight of it pressed against my chest with every breath. The once silent night seemed to hold its breath too, as if the forest itself was watching me, waiting. And then, suddenly, something in me stopped. I couldn't explain it. One moment I was pushing forward, and the next, my feet froze in place. The sound of my breathing loud in the quiet night. The scream continued, but there was something wrong now. It was no longer coming from any one direction. It was everywhere, surrounding me. It wasn't just in front of me or behind me. It seemed to echo in every corner of the woods, reverberating off the trees and into the very air around me. I whirled around, my heart thumping in my throat. The woman's voice, the same voice that had sent me running in a blind panic, was no longer tied to a specific place. It was as though she was everywhere, moving with me, following me. The weight of that realization hit me like a blow to the stomach. It felt like the very woods were alive, listening, watching and feeding off my growing fear. I looked back once more, my eyes darting through the shadows, expecting to see something or someone, lurking just beyond the reach of the flashlight's beam. But there was nothing. No shape. No figure. The trees stood silent and still, their shadows stretching out like dark specters. And yet the scream, it was right there. Closer. Panic set in. I turned on my heels and bolted back toward the car, my legs moving faster than they ever had. The path seemed endless now, the distance between me and the safety of the road stretching out into eternity. The screams followed me, relentless, growing louder with each frantic step I took. I didn't dare look back. The fear gnawed at me, a gnawing certainty that whatever was behind me wasn't human. It wasn't the woman anymore. It was something else, something that followed, something that thrived on fear. With every stride, the sound of the screams intensified, as if they were chasing me, closing the gap between us. The forest seemed to stretch, to pull me deeper into its clutches, as if the very ground was trying to drag me under. My breath came in shallow gasps, my chest tightening, but I kept running. I had to get back to the car. It was the only place that might offer me any kind of safety. But the screams never stopped. They were right behind me. Always just behind me. I stumbled into the car, gasping for air, my chest heaving with each frantic breath. My hands shook as I slammed the door shut, immediately locking it with a snap that seemed to echo in the silence of the night. I fumbled for the keys, my fingers slick with sweat. And finally, I managed to start the engine. The car's engine roared to life, but it sounded like a hollow growl in the stillness that surrounded me. I paused for a moment, gripping the wheel, trying to regain my composure. My mind was a storm, swirling with confusion, fear, and the gnawing feeling that something had gone horribly wrong. My fingers hovered over the phone before I finally called the police. As the phone rang, I found myself second-guessing every word I was about to say. What was I going to tell them? That I had been chasing the sound of a woman's scream through the woods and couldn't figure out where it came from. Would they believe me? Would they think I was just some panicked, delusional fool? The moment the line connected, I forced myself to speak, recounting every detail of the night. My search in the woods, the relentless scream, the strange sensation that I was being followed by something or someone. But as I spoke, a creeping doubt began to settle within me. My own words seemed absurd in the cold, rational light of dawn, and the events of the night felt as if they were slipping further away from me. Had it really happened? Was I simply paranoid? The question gnawed at me, and my stomach twisted with unease. The rest of the night, the headlights cutting through the darkness as I navigated the winding roads, the echo of the woman's scream still ringing in my ears. The relief of making it back to my house was short-lived, though, as the oppressive feeling of being watched never left me. The silence of my room felt suffocating, and sleep refused to come. Every shadow seemed to hold a secret. Every creak of the house amplified in my ears as if the darkness was reaching out to swallow me whole. I tried to forget. I really did. I spent the weekend attempting to push the haunting memory to the back of my mind, trying to convince myself it was just an illusion. But when I turned on the TV later that Sunday evening, everything changed. A chilling story broke on the local news. A woman had been found dead in the very woods where I had been. The same area, the same stretch of trees. She had gone missing weeks earlier, and as I listened, my blood ran cold. The body had been discovered in the exact place I had heard the screams. My stomach churned. How could that be? How was it possible that the woman I had been chasing in my mind, her voice echoing in the woods, had been dead all along? The details were even more unnerving. The authorities reported no signs of violence, no struggle, no indication of foul play. Everything appeared normal, almost undisturbed. The body had been left in a serene, almost peaceful state, lying there as if asleep. But it wasn't just the body that unnerved me. It was the timing, the location, the eerie coincidence that the screams I had heard were perhaps nothing more than a twisted premonition, a call from beyond. The realization hit me like a physical blow. The events of that night hadn't been a hallucination. They hadn't been some product of my paranoia. Something darker, something far more sinister, had been at play. Whether it was fate or something far beyond human understanding, I couldn't say. But I knew one thing for sure. I would never drive down that road again. Never. The shadows that lingered there, those unseen eyes, that haunting scream, had already claimed me once. And I wasn't foolish enough to risk tempting whatever malevolent force still haunted those woods. Never again.